Hi everyone, we're Mimicker, here to introduce all kinds of knowledge, even the stuff we didn't know about.
Yeah.
Let me paint a picture for you guys real quick. Imagine a world where a secret government agency sends these rogue violent agents into schools.
Oh boy.
Yeah, right. And their whole job is to just physically beat up bullies and terrify abusive parents.
Sounds completely unhinged.
It sounds like a crazy sci-fi movie, right? But that's actually the exact plot of a massive hit Korean webtoon and drama right now. It's called True Education.
Right, I've heard of it. It's huge.
It really is. But here's the terrifying reality we uncovered as we were putting together the sources for our deep dive today. People aren't just, consuming this show as some wild fantasy.
Yeah, they're watching it as wish fulfillment.
Exactly, pure wish fulfillment. So today we are taking a deep dive into a really comprehensive real-world report. It explores exactly why our actual classrooms have become so deeply broken that, honestly, vigilante justice sounds like a good idea to people.
It's pretty alarming.
It really is. We're going to uncover the mechanics of why classrooms are turning into battlegrounds, analyze the psychology behind this explosive student and parent behavior, and explore the radical, almost dystopian new laws countries are implementing just to keep the whole system from collapsing.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack.
For sure. Whether you are a parent, someone working in the system, or just a person who cares about the future of societal trust, this affects you.
Definitely. And before we really start unpacking the details, I want to be very clear with you, the listener, about our approach today.
Always important.
Right. Because the stack of sources we are analyzing, it touches on highly sensitive educational policies, child protection laws, and some incredibly politically charged legal cases.
Yeah, heavy stuff.
Very. So our role here is strictly to impartially report the findings and the data documented in the source material. We are not taking any political sides, nor are we endorsing any specific ideology. We are simply here to lay out the facts, the psychological mechanisms, and the structural realities that the reports have captured.
I appreciate that clarity. So let's leave the fictional world of True Education behind and look at the actual front lines. Because, honestly, the data shows a reality that is much harsher than any comic book.
It really does. It's not just a few isolated incidents anymore.
No, not at all. We aren't just talking about a few kids acting out. The source has outlined a total structural breakdown of the classroom environment over the last 5 years. Let's start with a case from South Korea in 2023 that really set off alarm bells globally.
Right, the Seoi Elementary case.
Yeah. The report highlights this absolutely tragic situation at Seoul Seoi Elementary School. A 23-year-old first-grade teacher was dealing with what sounds like, honestly, the most mundane issue imaginable.
Just a standard playground thing.
Exactly. One student accidentally scratched another with a pencil. A completely standard childhood scuffle.
That's how it started, yeah. But the escalation is what highlights the systemic failure here. The parent of the child involved relentlessly harassed this young teacher.
It's just so hard to wrap your head around.
It is. We are talking about endless, aggressive phone calls to her personal number at all hours. They were demanding she be fired and just subjecting her to intense humiliation.
Just over a pencil scratch.
Right. And the pressure was so severe and the lack of institutional support so absolute that this young teacher tragically took her own life right there in her classroom.
Oh my God. It's just heartbreaking.
It completely shattered the illusion that teachers were safe in their own workspaces.
And it wasn't just an isolated incident of one parent losing their temper either.
Oh.
The report details another incredibly high-profile situation, the Young Sun-sin case.
Oh, yeah. That one was wild.
Right. This was a high-ranking prosecutor whose child was accused of severe, cruel, verbal bullying against a classmate. Now, you would think a law enforcement official would, I don't know, correct the behavior.
You would hope so.
Instead, he totally weaponized the legal system. He filed endless administrative lawsuits and injunctions just to delay any punishment or school transfer for his kid.
Which meant the victim was forced to remain in the exact same environment as their abuser for months on end.
That is just sickening.
And it gets worse. The bully even openly bragged to the victim, saying something like, "My dad is a prosecutor, you can't win."
Wow.
Yeah. It demonstrates a shift where the legal mechanisms designed to protect civil rights are being inverted to protect malicious behavior simply because the parent has the resources and the knowledge to, game the system.
That is just staggering.
Mm.
And the fallout isn't limited to psychological warfare or legal loopholes either. Looking at the data we collect from Taiwan between 2024 and 2026, the sheer physical toll on educators is
The
alarming.
numbers are really hard to ignore.
Across 89 to 90 different schools, the records show reports of severe physical violence against teachers. And I want to be clear here, we aren't talking about a frustrated kid throwing an eraser across the room.
No, it's way beyond that.
We were talking about teachers suffering severe bite marks, being violently strangled, having their teeth broken, and being smashed with classroom furniture.
The physical violence is escalating because, well, the boundaries have just been erased. And what makes this infinitely worse for the educators is that when they try to defend themselves, the administrative system often turns against them.
Which makes no sense.
I know. The source material cites a highly controversial yet representative case from June 2026. A student maliciously and inappropriately touched a teacher.
Okay.
Operating purely on human instinct and self-preservation, the teacher pushed the student away.
I mean, a completely natural reflex. If someone touches you inappropriately, your body reacts before your brain even processes it.
Exactly. But the school administration immediately launched a formal investigation into the teacher.
You're kidding.
I wish I was. They actually issued the teacher a demerit, stating on the record that the teacher shouldn't have exhibited harmful behavior toward the student.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's like being a referee in a boxing match, but you're not allowed to wear protective gear. The fighters can hit you, and if you block a punch, the audience can sue you for stepping into the ring. How is a teacher supposed to function in that environment?
They can't. And that is the core finding of the initial data. The traditional concept of a safe classroom has been structurally dismantled.
Right.
Historically, the school was a protected sanctuary. The teacher's authority and physical safety were assumed baseline facts of society. Today, that boundary is completely gone. Teachers are left entirely exposed to both physical harm from students and career ruin from their own administration.
Which naturally brings up the biggest question in all of this. We know what is happening. The data is clear on the violence and the administrative chaos, but we really need to understand why.
Right, the underlying causes.
Yeah, like what is actually happening inside a student's brain that drives them to physically attack an educator, and why are schools letting it happen?
To understand the why, the source material dives deep into educational psychology, specifically analyzing externalizing behavior problems. One major cognitive mechanism driving this violence is called hostile attribution bias.
Wait, hold on. Are we saying a kid throws a desk because a teacher tapped their shoulder and they have a bias? That sounds like a really convenient clinical excuse for bad behavior. How is that a biological or cognitive issue and not just a severe lack of discipline?
It's a fair question, and it's one a lot of people ask. But we have to look at the neurology and psychology behind it. Research shows that some students, particularly those with cognitive or biological challenges like ADHD or oppositional defiant disorder,
Right.
exactly, often referred to as ODD. They literally process social information differently than a neurotypical person. ODD is a childhood behavior disorder characterized by a persistent pattern of angry, vindictive, and defiant behavior.
Okay.
Their brain's threat detection center, the amygdala, is hyperreactive. They skip the logical interpretation of a social cue and jump straight to a threat response.
So give me an example of how that actually plays out in the middle of a math class.
Imagine a teacher is walking down the aisle handing out lunch or returning graded papers. The teacher gently touches a student's shoulder just to get their attention.
Sure, happens all the time.
Right. To you or me, that's completely neutral, everyday interaction. But a student with hostile attribution bias doesn't feel a gentle tap. Their brain instantly interprets that physical contact as a hostile, targeted provocation.
Seriously?
Yes. Their cognitive processing tells them, this person is attacking me to make me look weak. They feel genuinely threatened, and they react with explosive, retaliatory violence.
Wow. So their brain is essentially lying to them about the teacher's intent, and they are reacting to a threat that doesn't actually exist.
That's a great way to put it.
That explains the unpredictable nature of some of these outbursts. But surely not every student throwing a punch has ODD or neurological miswiring. What about the rest of the behavioral issues?
For students without those specific neurobiological conditions, the report points to the frustration-aggression hypothesis.
Okay, what's that?
Well, in modern educational systems, especially across Asia, but increasingly globally, there is immense crushing pressure on academic achievement. When a student consistently fails to meet those standards, they experience intense frustration.
Makes sense. It's a lot of pressure.
This creates a rock-bottom sense of self-worth. They feel entirely powerless in an environment they are forced to attend every single day.
And when people feel powerless, they look for a way to take power back.
Precisely. And how do they regain a sense of power in a classroom? They attack the visible representation of the system, the teacher.
I see.
By humiliating, screaming at, or physically challenging the educator, the student projects dominance. It's performative. They gain immediate validation and awe from their peers, which temporarily cures that feeling of academic inadequacy.
They act out to look tough because they feel academically invisible. But here is where I get stuck. Even if a kid acts out for attention, surely the school disciplines them, right? The behavior should be corrected.
This is where we hit the most toxic part of the cycle. The report analyzes this through Albert Bandura's social learning theory.
Okay, how so?
Schools and administrators are currently so terrified of parental complaints, social media scandals, or legal action that they often just back down. They compromise. They reduce the punishment or ignore the behavior entirely just to keep the peace.
So by the school backing down just to keep the peace, they're essentially utilizing negative reinforcement. They're actively training the student that violence works because the student gets what they want.
What's fascinating here is, well, let me stop you right there because we need to get the psychological terminology exactly right.
Oh, did I mix it up?
A little. It's actually a dangerous mix of both positive and negative reinforcement, depending on whose perspective you look at. For the student, it is positive reinforcement. They throw a tantrum, they display aggression, and they are rewarded with control, power, and getting their way. The behavior is positively rewarded.
Ah, I see. And for the school administration?
For the school, it is negative reinforcement. The administration is experiencing the painful stimulus of a screaming student or an angry parent. By surrendering and giving the student what they want, the screaming stops. The painful stimulus is removed, so the administration's cowardly behavior is negatively reinforced.
Wow, so everybody's learning the wrong lesson.
Exactly. It creates a toxic loop. The student learns that violence is an effective tool to gain power, and the school learns that surrender is the easiest way to buy silence. And remember, Bandura's theory emphasizes social learning.
Meaning the other kids.
Yes. The other 29 kids in the classroom are watching this happen. It normalizes the violence and teaches the entire peer group that the teacher's authority is a complete illusion.
That is deeply unsettling. It means the system is literally engineered to encourage the worst behavior. But that really pivots us to the outside forces fueling this fire. Because we've established that students are learning. Violence works because schools are backing down. But why are schools so terrified?
That's the real question.
The data points to a completely different source of intimidation than parents. The violence isn't just physical anymore, it's administrative.
That's a crucial distinction. The report identifies a massive cultural shift toward what sociologists are calling education consumerism.
Education consumerism.
Yeah.
Like treating it like a business.
Exactly. Over the last few decades, parents have begun to treat education exactly like a perfect market commodity. They pay their taxes or they pay high tuition, and therefore they view themselves as clients.
Right.
They expect a flawless, custom-tailored product for their child, and they treat the teacher like a low-level customer service representative.
The rise of the monster parent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the defining trait of education consumerism is the sheer volume of petty demands. The report notes cases of parents threatening to sue a school because their child wasn't selected for a relay race.
A relay race. You've got to be joking.
I wish. Or filing formal complaints because a teacher didn't personally greet their child at the school gate with enough enthusiasm.
That is absurd.
It is, and what the researchers highlight is the staggering hypocrisy of these demands. These parents seamlessly switch roles depending on what benefits them in the moment.
How do you mean?
When they want to complain about a grade or a relay race, they are equal consumers demanding their taxpayer rights. But the second their own child commits a severe offense, say, brutally bullying another student and facing expulsion, they instantly pivot to, they're just innocent kids, their brains are developing, you can't punish them.
It's a completely rigged game. And if you look at the data we collect regarding this administrative weaponization, the scale of it is mind-blowing.
It really is.
Let's look at Taipei. They have a citizen hotline known as the 1999 hotline. In Taipei alone, this hotline receives about 8,000 school-related complaints every single year.
8,000. Just let that sink in.
And between 2024 and 2025, over 1,300 formal school incident meetings were triggered by these complaints. And we need to clarify, a school incident meeting isn't a quick chat over coffee. It is a formal, stressful, quasi-legal tribunal for the teacher.
and pay very close attention to the outcomes of those 1,300 tribunals. Over 80% of those complaints were accepted for a full, grueling investigation.
80%.
Yeah. Teachers had their lives turned upside down, their lesson plans scrutinized, and their character questioned. But at the end of the process, almost half of those complaints were proven to be completely unfounded, entirely baseless.
That's infuriating.
And out of all of that, only 3.3% led to any serious disciplinary action like a dismissal.
So teachers are being dragged through this terrifying, exhausting administrative tribunal process for absolutely nothing, just because a parent had a minor grievance and wanted to flex their power.
And the psychological damage of that process is profound. It's not just an inconvenience, it is a life-altering stressor.
I can only imagine.
The report highlights a heartbreaking reality in Pingtung, where a substitute teacher literally died from overwork and stress. The sheer volume of this administrative burden, combined with the constant looming fear of being investigated by a monster parent, is physically crushing educators.
That is just terrible.
This dynamic leads directly to a widespread phenomenon that educational researchers call defensive teaching.
Right. So what does this all mean? Earlier, we talked about the boxing referee metaphor. But defensive teaching requires a different lens. It's like a bus driver taking their hands off the steering wheel because they're terrified of being sued by the passengers for hitting a pothole.
That's a great analogy.
They completely avoid the pothole, sure, but the bus is still crashing. The teacher survives the day, but the education system completely stalls out.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is a perfect way to visualize it. Teachers are so terrified of being secretly recorded on a smartphone, having their words taken out of context, or being maliciously reported to the 1999 hotline that they simply stop trying to correct bad behavior.
They just give up.
They ignore the bullies, they stop stepping in to help struggling kids, they just deliver the bare minimum lesson plan and retreat.
But how did the laws get so twisted that a teacher can't even tell a kid to sit down without fearing an investigation?
It comes down to how child protection laws have been drafted and subsequently weaponized. Laws designed to protect children from abuse are obviously vital, but recent legislation often penalizes concepts like mental violence towards children using incredibly vague definitions.
Okay, what exactly is mental violence?
That's the problem. Nobody really knows. Does raising your voice to stop a physical fight in the hallway constitute mental violence? Does giving a student a failing grade on a test cause them emotional distress?
Oh, I see how that could be abused.
Because these definitions are so blurry, parents weaponize them. By trying to protect one individual student from hypothetical emotional discomfort, the legal system completely crushes the teacher's ability to maintain a functional, safe learning environment for the other 29 students in the room.
Which brings us to the final and perhaps most fascinating part of our deep dive, the fight back.
Yes, the pushback is finally starting.
Because listening to this, it sounds entirely hopeless. But the deep dive into the source material reveals that governments are realizing the bus is crashing, and they are finally drawing a line in the sand.
They have absolutely no choice. The entire public education system is on the verge of a mass exodus of teachers, so radical legislative reform is sweeping through Asia. Let's look at South Korea first.
Okay.
In late 2023, following the tragic suicide at Seoe Elementary that we discussed at the start of the show, the Korean government passed what is known as the 4 Laws to Restore Teachers' Authority.
A legal shield for the educators.
Exactly. The core mechanism of this legislation explicitly separates legitimate educational guidance from child abuse laws.
Oh, that's huge.
It legally states, on the record, that a teacher maintaining classroom order or disciplining a student within reason cannot be maliciously prosecuted as a child abuser. It effectively cuts off the monster parent's ability to weaponize those specific child protection laws against standard teaching practices.
That sounds like a necessary first step. But the report details what Japan is doing, and they're taking it to a whole other level.
Oh, Tokyo's new rules, yes.
Specifically, Tokyo's 2025 Customer Harassment Prevention Ordinance. And within that, they developed a 5-stage standard operating procedure for dealing with monster parents. When I read this in the sources, my jaw genuinely dropped.
Walk us through these stages, because it fundamentally changes what a school is.
It really does. It is a radically structured, almost militant approach to boundary setting. Stages 1 and 2 establish that a frontline teacher must never meet with a hostile or complaining parent alone.
Good.
Meetings are capped at a strict maximum of 30 minutes, and they are officially recorded for legal evidence.
Okay, that seems sensible. Just good boundaries and maintaining a record. But if the parent continues to be unreasonable, raises their voice, or makes demands, they hit stage 3. At this point, the frontline teacher is completely removed from the situation. The teacher goes back to the classroom, and the school administration, the principal or vice principal, takes over all communication with that parent.
Taking the target off the individual teacher's back.
Yes. But if the harassment continues into stage 4, it escalates drastically. At stage 4, the school brings in professional counselors and external corporate lawyers to sit in on the meetings.
Wait, corporate lawyers?
Yes, the lawyers evaluate the parent's demands in real time. If a parent demands a teacher be fired over a relay race, the lawyer legally rejects it on the spot.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about what that actually looks like in practice. A parent comes into a middle school to complain about a math grade, and they find themselves sitting across a conference table from a corporate attorney taking notes. It completely destroys the traditional illusion of a warm school community and replaces it with a legal battlefield.
And if the parent still doesn't back down, they trigger stage 5. Stage 5 is complete legal proxy. At this stage, the parent is legally barred from contacting the teacher, the principal, or anyone on the school grounds.
Whoa. So who do they talk to?
If they want to communicate about their child's education, they must speak exclusively to the school's external attorney. Furthermore, if there is any physical violence, screaming in the halls, or even defamation of the teacher on social media, the police are called immediately and criminal charges are filed.
It's literally treating an angry PTA member like a hostile corporate entity trying to execute a hostile takeover. It's a complete legal firewall. And Taiwan is looking at similar structural reforms too, based on the data, right?
Yes, Taiwan is currently pushing for a dedicated Teacher Rights Protection Act. They are trying to build on a previous 2026 law by proposing actual financial and legal penalties for parents who file malicious, anonymous complaints just to harass teachers.
Make them pay for it.
Furthermore, they want to expand employee assistance programs, or EAPs. The goal there is to actually compensate teachers for the wages they lose if they are unjustly suspended during these endless, unfounded administrative investigations.
So it's shifting from just defending the teacher to actually penalizing the parent for abusing the system.
This raises an important question, though. It's about recognizing and protecting the basic human rights of the educator, which have been entirely overlooked in the rush to cater to education consumerism.
I see where you're going, but it really makes you step back and look at the whole picture. Which brings us to the end of our journey today. We've gone from the fictional vigilantes fighting bullies in true education to the stark, often depressing reality of modern classrooms.
It's a rough reality.
We've unpacked the mechanics of how physical violence and cognitive misfires, like hostile attribution bias, are making the physical act of teaching dangerous. We've explored how education consumerism and the weaponization of administrative complaints are forcing brilliant educators into the paralyzed state of defensive teaching. And finally, we've seen the radical new legal firewalls being built in places like South Korea, Japan, just to keep the teaching profession from going extinct. I want to remind you, the listener, that this isn't just internal teacher drama or bureaucratic red tape. This fundamentally impacts the quality of education every single student receives.
Absolutely.
Because a terrified, exhausted teacher who is constantly looking over their shoulder, waiting for a lawsuit or a physical assault, simply cannot inspire, mentor, or guide the next generation. The bus might not be hitting the potholes, but it certainly isn't moving forward.
And that leaves us with a lingering thought to consider long after we wrap up today. These strict procedural barriers, the corporate lawyers, the 30-minute timers, the legal proxies, they are absolutely necessary right now to protect teachers' safety.
Yeah, they really are.
But if our schools are forced to permanently adopt corporate customer service protocols just to survive a normal school day, what does that do to the traditional, deeply human bond between a student and a mentor? Will the teachers of tomorrow be forced to act more like legal administrators than educators?
Thanks for tuning into this episode. If you enjoyed our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and turn on the notification bell. See you guys.